Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're taking you to a pretty desolate area, to the outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's to the West Mesa.
Yeah, a desolate stretch of desert that unfortunately holds a very dark secret.
And this secret began to surface back in 2009 when a woman, just walking her dog, made a very chilling discovery.
Yeah, a human femur bone, just unearthed by chance, like a whisper from the earth itself.
And that discovery set off a whole chain of events, really, that would reveal a pretty horrifying truth.
The unearthing of 11 women, all buried in shallow graves.
The West Mesa murders, as they came to be known. This is a story of vulnerability, loss, and the enduring search for justice.
It's a story that unfolds like a slow creeping shadow, stretching back to the early 2000s.
A time when a pattern of disappearances began to plague Albuquerque.
Young women, many of them involved in sex work or struggling with addiction, vanished without a trace.
And their families and friends, desperate for answers, often faced indifference from law enforcement.
Their pleas for help were dismissed, their loved ones reduced to statistics.
But in the midst of this apathy, one detective refused to let these cases fade into oblivion.
Detective Ida Lopez, assigned to the Missing Persons Unit. She saw a connection between the missing women that others overlooked.
A pattern that hinted at something far more sinister than isolated tragedies.
She began compiling a list, meticulously documenting each disappearance, searching for any clue that might link them together.
That must have been a daunting task, made even more challenging by the lack of resources and the marginalized status of the victims.
It was a fight against time and indifference, a battle to give these women a voice.
So, as Detective Lopez dug deeper, she discovered a chilling rumor circulating on the streets.
Whispers of a predator, a shadow lurking in the city's underbelly.
A figure known only as the West Mesa Bone Collector.
A name that would soon become synonymous with fear and unanswered questions.
But at this point, the rumors were just that. Whispers carried on the wind, unsubstantiated fears.
The vastness of the West Mesa, a seemingly endless expanse of sand and scrub, made the prospect of finding any evidence seem impossible.
Like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yet, Detective Lopez persisted, driven by a sense of duty and a growing suspicion that something truly evil was at play.
She collected dental records, DNA samples, any shred of information that might help identify the missing women.
A painstaking process, a testament to her unwavering commitment.
But as the years passed, the trail seemed to grow cold.
Media coverage dwindled, public interest waned.
It was as if the city had simply forgotten about these women. Their lives relegated to the margins of society, their disappearances a footnote in the annals of Albuquerque's history.
But fate, as it often does, had other plans.
A twist of circumstance, a seemingly unrelated event would breathe new life into the investigation.
The 2008 housing crisis, a shockwave that reverberated across the nation, reached the desolate landscape of the West Mesa.
Construction projects ground to a halt, leaving behind a landscape frozen in time.
A landscape that held a dark secret, waiting to be unearthed.
And it was in this stillness, in this unexpected pause, that the West Mesa would begin to whisper its secrets.
A woman walking her dog, a familiar path, a chilling discovery that would shatter the silence.
The same woman, the same dog, the same stretch of desert where a femur bone had been found 5 years earlier.
This time, it wasn't just one bone, it was a cluster of bones, scattered amidst the scrub, a silent testament to a horrifying truth.
The police were called, and the investigation was reignited with an intensity fueled by years of frustration and unanswered questions.
The vast expanse of the West Mesa, once a symbol of the city's sprawling growth, transformed into a haunting landscape of loss.
What had begun as a search for missing women became a race against time to uncover the truth behind their disappearances.
Yeah.
So the discovery of multiple remains, completely transformed the West Mesa, went from a desolate landscape into a sprawling crime scene.
Yeah. A meticulous grid was laid out, across 92 acres. It was just a stark reminder of the scale of the tragedy.
Investigators, armed with shovels and sifters, began the grim task of unearthing the truth buried beneath the surface.
40,000 cubic yards of dirt excavated, each layer revealing a piece of the puzzle.
And the remains of 11 women emerged from the earth, their bones fragmented, scattered by time and the elements.
A somber tapestry, really, woven from bone and dust, each fragment a whisper of a life cut short.
And it was Detective Lopez's meticulous work, those years spent gathering dental records, DNA samples, All of it proved crucial in this moment.
Yeah, her dedication, her refusal to let these women be forgotten, now providing a roadmap to identification.
And 7 of the 11 victims were women from her list, women whose families had held on to hope, a hope now shattered by the grim reality of the West Mesa.
Monica Candelaria, a loving mother, known for her infectious laughter. Her absence left a huge void in her young son's life.
Doreen Marquez, a devoted mother battling addiction, her life unraveling in the years before her disappearance.
Victoria Chavez, reported missing by her mother after a year of silence. Her disappearance left her family shattered.
Veronica Romero, a mother of 4, vanished without a trace, her children left to grapple with the mystery of their mother's fate.
Cinnamon Elks. She was struggling with addiction, her life marked by hardship, but also by a fierce love for her children.
Julie Nieto, a talented seamstress and cook, her disappearance a heartbreaking loss for her son, who adored her despite her struggles with addiction.
Michelle Valdez, a vibrant and generous soul. And she was pregnant with her second child when she vanished.
Oh, that's a double tragedy. A life extinguished before it even had a chance to blossom.
And then there were the cousins, Jamie Barella and Evelyn Salazar, who disappeared together after a family gathering.
Jamie was just 15 years old, full of life and promise, her dreams extinguished too soon.
And Evelyn, a young mother of 2, her disappearance leaving her children without a mother, her family without answers.
And Selene Edwards, the only African-American victim. A 15-year-old who had run away from foster care in Oklahoma, her life marked by instability, her journey ending tragically in the New Mexico desert.
And lastly, Virginia Cloven, a woman who had endured immense loss, her brother's murder sending her life into a spiral of grief and addiction. Her disappearance, another cruel blow to a family already shattered by tragedy.
11 names, 11 stories, 11 lives extinguished, their shared fate, a chilling testament to their vulnerability, their lives relegated to the margins of society.
But the question remained, who was responsible for these horrific acts? Who was the West Mesa Bone Collector?
So investigators turned to satellite imagery, hoping to find clues in the landscape itself.
And the Earth, as if yielding to their persistence, began to reveal its secrets.
Satellite photos from 2004 showed tire tracks leading to disturbed patches of Earth, areas that would later be identified as grave sites.
Yeah, it was like a chilling roadmap, just a glimpse into the killer's movements.
And then in 2005, the photos revealed even more tire tracks, more disturbed Earth, a grim indication that the killings were continuing.
The housing boom was, in full swing at the time, and it masked these disturbances, providing this veil of normalcy over a landscape of death.
And then in 2006, the landscape changed dramatically. The housing bubble burst, construction projects halted, and the West Mesa fell silent.
A silence that held the key to unlocking the mystery.
You see, the extensive digging and grading that had taken place during the construction boom had inadvertently disturbed the burial ground, scattering remains and likely forcing the killer to abandon the site.
A bittersweet twist of fate, a disruption that both hindered and aided the investigation.
So the timelines established, the burial sites identified. The focus now shifts to finding the perpetrator.
A $100,000 reward was offered, a plea for information, a desperate hope for answers.
Countless tips poured in, each one meticulously investigated, each one leading down a path of hope and disappointment.
The investigation became a maze, really, a tangled web of leads, rumors, and speculation.
As the investigation into the West Mesa murders intensified, 2 names kind of emerged from the shadows, each casting a long shadow of suspicion: Lorenzo Montoya and Joseph Blair.
Yeah. Both men, with histories marred by violence, they became focal points in the search for the West Mesa Bone Collector.
Montoya was known to police for his brutality toward sex workers, and he fit the profile with a chilling accuracy.
His 1999 arrest for the sexual assault and choking of a prostitute, a case that was ultimately dropped because the victim refused to testify, it served as a haunting precursor to the horrors unearthed on the West Mesa.
And then in December of 2006, a confrontation with a sex worker and her pimp ended in Montoya's own death.
A violent struggle, a life taken, and a chilling echo of the brutality that had become synonymous with the West Mesa Bone Collector.
The timing of Montoya's death, just a year before the first bone was discovered on the Mesa, it added another layer of intrigue to the case.
Could this have been the end of the West Mesa Bone Collector's reign of terror?
While Montoya's history of violence and the circumstances of his death painted a pretty compelling picture, the lack of concrete evidence linking him to the West Mesa victims left investigators with a gnawing sense of uncertainty.
Yeah. He remained a specter, a haunting possibility. but the question of his involvement in the West Mesa murders remained unanswered.
The investigation then turned its focus to Joseph Blair, a man with an extensive criminal record, including convictions for the sexual assault of minors.
Blair's history of predatory behavior, coupled with reports that he had been seen stalking sex workers in Albuquerque around the time of the disappearances, placed him squarely on the radar of investigators.
A search of Blair's home uncovered business records connecting him to a nursery that had sold plants matching a tag found near one of the victim's remains.
Oh, wow. A tantalizing clue suggesting a possible connection, but not enough to solidify a case.
Blair's ex-wife also came forward with some pretty disturbing claims, alleging that she had found women's jewelry and underwear in their home that didn't belong to her or their daughter.
Another piece of the puzzle, another shadow of suspicion cast upon Blair. But still, the evidence remains circumstantial.
Like Montoya, Blair's potential involvement in the West Mesa murders remained a haunting question mark. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to 90 years in prison for the sexual assaults of minors, a sentence that brought some measure of justice for those victims, but offered little solace to the families of the women buried on the West Mesa.
Yeah, the lack of a definitive suspect, the absence of that one irrefutable piece of evidence, left the investigation suspended in a state of perpetual ambiguity.
The West Mesa, with its vast expanse and its unforgiving terrain, had yielded its grim secrets, but it had also guarded its truths, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a community grappling with the weight of unresolved grief.
The 6 women from Detective Lopez's original list, still unaccounted for, serve as a haunting reminder that the story of the West Mesa murders is far from over.
The desert, with its silence and its secrets, continues to hold the answers. Answers that may one day come to light, bringing closure to the families of the victims and revealing the true face of the West Mesa Bone Collector. But until then, all we can do is hope that someday justice will prevail and those responsible for these heinous acts will be held accountable.
It's a sobering reminder that even in the vastness of the desert, evil can lurk, and that the fight for justice can be long and arduous. This case serves as a call to action for all of us to be vigilant, to support victims, and to never give up hope in the pursuit of truth.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark heart of the West Mesa murders. It's a story that continues to haunt and intrigue, and we can only hope that someday the truth will finally be revealed.